What's going on, guys? It's Bromley at Empire Barbell, and today we're going to talk about mistakes that lifters make with programming. Now, real quick, go ahead and click the like and subscribe buttons. Go ahead and click the notification bell. We're putting out 3 to 4 videos a week, and I want to make sure that you guys don't have to play catch up. So go ahead and click the notification bell so you can get those videos as they come out. So starting out with mistakes lifters make with their programming, the first thing, one of the most easily fixable things is exercise selection. The way I think of programming is you are setting a baseline of work and you are steadily exposing yourself to more and more work in the context of that baseline. The baseline is the frequency of your training, it's the threshold you're working in, it's how much recovery you're allowed, and it's the exercises that you select. So no matter how good your programming is across the board, if you're applying it to exercises that don't do what you think they will, that don't carry over quite the way you think they might, or that are detracting from the main lift, you might be saddened to figure out that a perfectly executed training block still doesn't yield the results that you're looking for. Now, a lot of you guys are easily influenced by more advanced lifters because they make up the lion's share of content. Of course, the guys with the 900-pound squats and world record totals, they're the ones that you want to follow. They're also the ones that require a lot more specificity and a lot more complexity in their training. They have decades of lifting that they're trying to build upon. It's going to take something different to get their 900 squat to 950 than what would be required to get somebody their first 500-pound squat. So looking at these lifters, you have to take with a grain of salt. Is this something they're doing because it's specific to them, or is it because it's a more generally applicable training principle? Usually it's something that is specific to them, so it's important to know that. Now, the things that distract lifters, and it's a problem because, I mean, one, it's something that these exotic exercise variations are things that may not work the way you think they will, but they also distract from the work that you do need because there's only so much time to train, there's only so much recovery. You need to be selecting things that are going to be the most conducive to getting to where you want to go. For most of you, that means taking the main developmental movements and milking them for all they are worth. Anything else tends to be a distraction. You're not going to do a lot better than squatting, pressing, and pulling. They are foundational developmental movements. That's how they were created. Way back in the day, they were made so that lifters might get bigger and stronger. It just so happens they're also the competitive movements we need to get good at. So my recommendation, take the basic movements, take the way that you plan on executing them in contest, and train them diligently, train them frequently, find ways to manipulate the training threshold, the volume, the intensity over time, find ways to move back and forth between different training thresholds over several week periods, and dedicate yourself to getting good at filling out those thresholds. Variation is great, it's good, but it should not be the main driving force. You need some variation for the sake of it. I recommend having your main movement and then at least one close variation, but start with things like changing your grip, start with things like changing your stance. Don't fixate on more exotic exercise. In fact, the more exotic it is, the more I strongly recommend you stay away from it. There's a specific way to incorporate things like accommodating resistance, bands, chains, and it gets kind of convoluted. If you haven't figured out how to run a very simple linear program that's based on very few exercises, I promise you, you are only going to get thrown off by incorporating more random, more exotic movements that utilize a bunch of different specialty bars or a bunch of different complex setups. So don't let exotic exercise selection derail your training. The second mistake people make with their programming is not buying in. I call this taking your ball and going home. So if you run a program, but it's kind of like you're getting into a new relationship and it's like the first sign of trouble, you're gonna bail, you're not gonna get good results. So you have this very specific burden as a lifter that no matter how much input you get, no matter how much coaching you get, you are still responsible for making it work. So just like in arranged marriage in a very tight-knit community, you're responsible for making it work. You have to flesh it out. You have to take it to the end. You have to take note. If things aren't going right, you have to be able to analyze, look, and say, what's not going right? What can I pivot? What can I change next time? If every time you bail at the first sign of trouble, you're never really going to learn how to make these aspects of training work. If you can't work week to week, you're not going to put together block to block, which means you're not going to see a good result over an entire macro cycle. So don't get in the habit of just taking your ball and going home because you had a bad week. Don't get in the habit of bailing at the first sign of trouble. If you committed to run a program start to finish, say, I'm going to get as much as I can out of this, not just from a training aspect, but from a knowledge aspect, because no matter how much coaching you get, you still have to be able to identify the pitfalls on your own. The main problem with program hopping is that at the end of the day, you have lifters that have done pieces of a million different programs, and at the end of the day, can't really tell you anything specific about any one of them. However, if you do get in the habit of running programs through start to finish, you're more likely to get a good result at some point and get kind of a bigger picture as far as how each working week should bleed into the next one, or what each threshold should feel like, what each training day should feel like. There are no bonus points for doing all the programs. There's no bonus points for doing 2 weeks of every single program out there. Long story short, you're not going to learn anything. Okay, so you need to learn how your body responds to these programming decisions, and you're only going to get that if you run them through start to finish. Each time you run through the same type of program, you're going to have a better understanding of how it should feel, of how it works, and you're not going to be making bad, lazy, or half-assed decisions. By buying in, you are going to force yourself to adhere to the program as it's written and to make better decisions as time goes on. You're not going to learn anything just by jumping around. You're going to get fragments of each different program. You're going to judge entire programs as being garbage when really it was you that was garbage. So do your due diligence, buy in, commit to the program, run it through start to finish, take diligent notes the whole way through. And if by the end of it, you don't have any notes, you don't have any increased knowledge about yourself, about how these different pieces of the whole mechanism fit together, about how to run, make better decisions as you run the program, then you screwed up. Then you didn't pay attention, and it doesn't matter what program you're going to run, you're going to do the same thing every time. So pay attention. Don't just take your ball and go home because something goes wrong. Progress is not strictly linear, no matter how linear the program is. So you have to be ready to get frustrated and then do some good, honest, hard evaluation, make changes as time goes on. The third one, and easily the most common, is trying to go too heavy too often. Now, what does that mean? Heavy is very relative. It's also very vague. If you're only used to going to 80%, 85% will seem heavy, even if you're not doing it to failure. Heavy can mean a very hard effort. It can mean an absolutely high load. It can mean something that's ultimately very taxing. It can mean something that's not very taxing, it's just more than what you're used to. So when I say too heavy, I mean anytime you see a percentage, you think that you're supposed to go as hard in the paint as you can on that percentage. You've all done it. If I write 3 sets of 8 at 65%, those are 3 easy sets of 8 reps for most people. Now, usually what I get back is 8, a set of 7, and a set of 5, or a bunch of force reps, or a RPE 10. What that tells me is that lifters are doing a really shitty job of trying to do what that part of the program mandated, meaning you're supposed to be working in a specific threshold. There's times where the threshold is not supposed to be ball breaking. There's times where it's supposed to be easy. If you do kind of easy work in the first week, that gives you room to improve on the second week. Or if you have a recovery week, but instead you're going too heavy, you're not allowing yourself to recover, that presents a problem. So going too heavy, thinking that the only way to train is to go balls out, to go hard in the paint every single time you can, that's going to set you up for failure, not just for frustration, but for stagnation and eventually injury. It's not just about not maxing out every week. It's about not taking everything to failure every week. It's about allowing yourself to fill out different percentage ranges and acclimate to different rep ranges. And you don't do that if every single time you go to touch a barbell, you're trying to take it to the absolute limit. That teaches bad habits. It teaches form breakdown. It doesn't give your joints a chance to recover. It doesn't give your body a chance to recover. So a good program is going to have periods of recovery built into it. And if every single time you're just ignoring the recommendations and going as hard as you can, you're going to hit a brick wall. You don't learn anything from missed reps. You don't learn anything from all-out weekly grinders. All you learn is that the weight is always going to feel heavy. It's always going to feel slow. There's something that only happens with experience, and that's learning how to make lightweight work for you. That doesn't mean lightweight as in 20 rep sets. That means lightweight in the sense that you get through however many sets and reps, and it's not the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. So you might get through 4 sets of 6, and by the end of it, you might be like, yeah, I had a few reps in the tank. Yeah, that was pretty straightforward. Yeah, that was pretty easy. And then moving into the next phase, you might notice, okay, now we're doing sets of 4. Okay, now the weight's a little more substantial. Now I'm experiencing a new shock to my system. It's not just about the fact that every workout I was going as hard as I fucking could. It's about the fact that you are steadily, incrementally, and predictably exposing yourself to more stress. That does not mean going to limit every single time you touch a barbell. That is the opposite of what we're talking about. We're talking about writing out, predicting how you're going to expose yourself to more stress without having to guess or hope that you get stronger in the process. If all you're doing is bumping up against a brick wall, eventually you're going to come up to a brick wall that you can't jump over, and then you're not going to know what the hell to do after that. I see it all the time. If somebody's doing an RPE scale, you know, they should be hitting a single at an RPE 8. They put out this horrific grinder and then talk about how easy it felt. I have seen people over and over and over pull out a grinder, a 4-second rep single, and tell me, well, it didn't feel heavy. People always have a way of rationalizing their bullshit that because they talk about the weight a certain way, that it doesn't mean that it was actually heavy or actually maximal. I've seen guys literally get stuck in the middle of a lift and then say, well, it didn't feel heavy. That stupid crap is only going to set you back. You have to be honest about where a performance is relative to your actual capabilities. Okay, you have nobody's going to be able to guess that for you. You have to be able to flesh that out yourself, and that's what you're on the hook for. So thanks for watching, guys. Those are just 3 easy fixes. If you can keep your weight in a reasonable threshold and use changes in volume and intensity to drive progress, if you can pick better exercise selection, if you can buy in and commit to following the program from start to finish, you will be a much better lifter. You will see much more progress. Go ahead and leave questions and comments in the comment box. Go ahead and start a thread on the forum, empire-forum.com. Till next time, this is Bromley, Empire Barbell. I'll see you.